Ladies and gents, welcome to the video. I'm GetGoodGuy, and today we're talking Battlefield 1 again. The resurgence continues, but a bit different this time. People seem to want to know if it's actually worth going back to it after I've talked about it, with interest in BF5 continuing to decline and players are looking for something else to do. And I've made 2 or 3 videos about BF1 recently and the great things it offers, so it's time to balance that out a bit and actually talk about who it's going to be good for and who it's not going to be good for, probably. So I'm going to go through some of the major complaints that people have so that you're properly informed and can weigh up your decision about going back to the game or perhaps for playing it for the first time. It's not all sunshine and rainbows regardless of the nostalgia that's blinding some people right now. But before that, the most important thing probably is I'll be having a bit of a look at the player numbers to try to make sure you aren't wasting your time if you do want to come back to the game. Now just let me say before we go into that, although this video focuses more so on what some people feel this game doesn't do well, I think this game is pretty fantastic. I've loved playing it for the background footage. I highly recommend it. And if you want to hear about the awesome reasons why I like this game, I'll link to 2 of my previous BF1 videos in the description below. It's just such a good game. Okay, so I just went to manually check the amount of players in a lobby or queuing for a lobby on Xbox, which is, I believe, traditionally the lowest populated Battlefield platform. So if these numbers are healthy, they're likely to also be alright on PC and PlayStation as well, if not even better. And if you want to do the same thing on PS4 or PC, then feel free to do so and leave the figure in the comments below for people to go and find. So there were 1,698 people on Xbox Battlefield 1 when I checked, which is pretty healthy for a game of this age that's been superseded by a newer version and hasn't had new content since I think February 2018, and that's a higher number than last time I checked for my previous video, so good signs. I did this check a little after lunchtime UK time on Saturday the 9th of May 2020, so during the pandemic lockdown for lots of places in the world, and this should be a fairly busy period for gaming, you would imagine, but of course these numbers can be affected by time zones, when US players are on or aren't on, etc. So these numbers will go up and down, but this is a good indicator. Now, something that was raised on my previous video was that the server browser list can be a little unreliable, and I accept that, but the numbers ultimately won't be too much different from what I'm laying out for you. I refreshed it quite a lot of times and the server number remained between 54 and 58. So from that we can take that there were about, say, 55 servers, but about 25 of them had nowhere near enough people in them to be worthwhile, so just over half of the servers are usable. And again, I think that's alright overall, but although that does sound promising, and it is, it's only promising for certain players, because server locations have a huge impact, of course. And I know this is what some of you really want to know. And this is also regardless of the time you record the data generally. I've looked at different times and some regions pretty much always have low numbers, so if you're in the UK, a decent chunk of Europe, or the US, you've got a really strong chance of having a good choice of servers. But that's about it really, unless you're playing just outside this region and you can still get a decent ping. Because for the Middle East, you're pretty much done, Oceania the same, Africa the same, Brazilian servers have almost nobody, so basically, it's only really worth it if you're playing in or right near one of the major Battlefield playing geographic locations. As for game modes, you're pretty much set to go if you want to play Conquest, Operations, Team Deathmatch, and maybe a Shock Operations server if you're lucky, but nothing else the vast majority of the time. Although this does somewhat depend on what the playlist is for that week and that kind of thing, but most of the time I've checked, this has been the case. So again, if you want to play one of those modes, then great. If not, then you're kind of out of luck. My biggest piece of advice is use the server browser, as I've been doing. Search for the modes you want, choose the servers with the best ping for you and with lots of players in them. If you use the quick search function, it can often put you into an empty server or a server in the wrong region, which leaves some people who don't know how to use the server browser or they just don't use it with the impression that the game is dead or whatever and they give up. So give yourself the best possible chance to find a good game before deciding if you're going to just quit out or not. Oh, I should also say as a comparison point, when I checked the BF5 player numbers for my previous video, although it was at a different time of day, there were about 2,500 people playing on that game then. So basically, if you have been able to find games fairly easily on BF5 of late, if you're in one of the regions I've recommended, you're also, again, probably going to find it pretty easy on BF1. There's a trend there. Now, moving on, as for the major concerns about BF1 that get brought up, these aren't all necessarily problems I have, as I really enjoy the game, but it's important to understand that my opinion isn't going to be the same as everyone else's, so I'm going to lay this out for you so you can make up your own mind. And I'll go through each of these points pretty quickly as my gameplay carries on in the background. Okay, first off, probably the biggest one, gunplay. Some people do not like the way the guns work work in Battlefield 1 because there's lots of mechanics to them and they're not, how do I put this? They're not like 100% accurate all the time. I don't want to get into all the key stats of this and all the minute details, but the layman's way of putting it is some people feel like in BF5 your bullets go where you aim, whereas in BF1 they feel like the bullets don't go where you aim. Now, I personally really like the gunplay of BF1 and also can appreciate the gunplay of BF5, but the gunplay in BF1 is deeper. Some people call it casual. I completely disagree with that. But if you don't have to deal with suppression, with pacing your shots, and you don't want to deal with some weapons not being accurate at range because they're not designed for it, so your bullets don't go where you're aiming, yes, I'm holding in the rant here, then BF1 might be a bit of a struggle for you. Not because you're bad at it or anything, but just because you don't like how the gunplay works. So keep that in mind. If you like more sort of laser shooters where it's just shoot and it goes there, then BF5 is going to be more up your alley and other games like that. BF1, certain weapons you have to be stationary with them. Certain weapons you have to ADS before shooting to get accuracy. Some weapons only work out to about 50 meters and then they're wildly inaccurate. All this kind of stuff. That's probably the biggest point hit, but if you like me and you like to learn the in-depth mechanics of gunplay and learn to master the weapons, you might really enjoy it. Next up, 3D or manual spotting. Another thing I don't really have an issue with. Actually, I really like that you can spot people because it's kind of hard to see people in Battlefield games at times, but some people despise it. They think, again, it's casual. They think that you're just going around shooting Doritos above heads and all this kind of stuff. So if you don't like that, then again, that's something you definitely want to think about. I can appreciate both sides of this argument. It's going to come down to personal preference. If you get frustrated with games like BF5, where you're not sure where anyone is a lot of the time and you get shot randomly from miles away and you couldn't see them, then Battlefield 1 might be better for you. But if you like the more, let's say, tactical aspect or stealth or realistic or whatever, then maybe you won't like BF1. Next up, planes. Planes in BF1 are very, very, very annoying. I'm not going to go into whether they're overpowered or not, but on some maps it feels like you're getting bombed constantly. I highly advise if you're in a squad, start as a unit shooting at planes. Definitely get used to using AA guns. Maybe use the Burton with incendiary rounds. Get used to trying to counter the planes because they will dominate if you don't do something about them. Staying within this kind of realm, we could say tanks, artillery trucks, basically vehicles in this game can be very, very strong. They're fairly strong up close. They can be strong from range. In BF5, the tanks are good from further away and pretty clunky up close. In BF1, they're better up close than in BF5. I think a lot of people will agree. Get used to their strength and once again, get used to targeting them as a unit because they will dominate if you don't. Okay, next point, the sweet spot mechanic. Bolt action rifles in this game, or sniper rifles for the uninitiated, can, or at least some of them, one shot to the body from certain ranges. They have different ranges they can do it from. This helps to differentiate them and such like, which BF5 doesn't really have, but some people don't like this. They again think it's casual. Me personally, at least on console, I think it's easier to use other weapons than a bolt action still in a lot of circumstances, but people don't like getting one shot by things, so I can also understand why it'd be annoying. And yes, it does take less skill than getting a headshot alone, but then it also takes less skill to pump people full of lead with an SMG. You know, whatever, it's not worth the argument. Basically, if you don't like that, then be aware of it. A lot of this video is me saying be aware of this aspect. Some will love it, some will hate it, but yes, sniper rifles can one shot to center mass from certain ranges. Next point, nade spam. I think they managed to curb this a bit actually, but there are a lot of nades in this game that get thrown about. I don't have much to say about this. If you don't like lots of explosives, then it's a problem for you. Dynamite is used quite a lot in this game. The rocket gun's not actually an explosive, it's just a large projectile. But there's mines and limpet charges. There's lots of stuff that isn't just shooting at people. Nades, a core aspect of this. One specific nade, which is its own complaint, gas grenades. Gas is a thing in this game. People throw it around, you have to put your gas mask on, or you will choke in the gas. Can annoy some people. I'm used to it. Some people never got used to it. It's not a particularly skillful thing to use again. You throw it into an area, the gas comes out and it hits people through walls, through floors. So weigh up if you think that's going to annoy you or not. My next point, the contrast in the game, the brightness and contrast. I used to complain about this a lot. It's still an issue now. It's an issue in BF5 as well. The contrast seems to be crazy. Some areas are really dark. Some areas are really bright. It makes it hard to see people. It means you have to spot people like all the time. I don't like that. I've had a lot of other people agree with me. They don't like that. There's no real way to fix it. I've done what I can in the video to mitigate it, by the way. In each different map, I've changed the colors, I've changed the brightness, the contrast, all that, to try to level it out, and still you can see that the contrast is kind of crazy at times. My next point, laggy people, especially now, because players from other regions are trying to play in these regions because they don't have people in their own region playing. It's not their fault, they want to play the game. Same thing in BF5 actually, as DICE keeps shutting down servers. Expect to see some laggy people and it can be irritating, but there's no way around it. Next point, cheating. Something I wasn't really aware of in Battlefield 1, to be honest. Again, I play in console, so I've done these videos recently about how good the game is, and lots of people in my comments were saying, yeah, if there's not hackers in your lobby. Apparently on PC there's still lots of hacking on BF1. Lol, DICE, EA, I guess we just don't care about hacking in Battlefield games anymore. Same as BF5, there's just lots of hackers. I don't know much to say about it. It's sad, it sucks, it's lame, but people do it, so you should know about it. And then two smaller issues to end with, loading crashes. Sometimes when you're loading into a game, it just decides you're not going to get in there. It doesn't tell you it's crashed, it just sort of stops. It says that you're queuing and it'll just queue forever. Then on top of that, inviting friends. I don't know if this is on other platforms as well, but on Xbox, if I invite my friends and then search for a game, it doesn't take them into the game. I have to go into a game and then invite them. So it's all a bit of a pain, it's all kind of unnecessary, but a minor point comparatively with the other ones I've brought up. And that is what I have to say today. Those are the concerns people have. That's a look at the player numbers, at least a hint at the player numbers, which should give you an idea, even if you're not on Xbox, of what to expect and whether you're going to be okay playing the game. I've linked you below to two videos talk about the great aspects of the game, and I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, subscribe for way more content, lots of Battlefield plus other stuff coming, and all the links to my social media, including Patreon, can be found in the description and my pinned comment. Here is the Board of Awesome for the epic people who already support the channel on Patreon. They're all absolute heroes, and I love them all deeply, and of course, often. If you want to join them on the Board of Awesome, the link to the Patreon page is in the description and my pinned comment. And with that all said, I'm GetGoodGuy, and I'll see you next time. Laters. This also means, by extension, that the initial TTK change in 2018 didn't help player retention, nor inspire a significant amount of people to try the game.